Greetings, my wonderful Jellyspoons. Welcome back to another episode of Monday Madness, the Monday show where I bring you pretty much anything and everything. This week, of course, was Easter. And what is the best thing, the most appropriate, thematical, topical thing to talk about at Easter time? A beautiful turmoil of LGBT romance that culminates in major character death. Happy Easter, everyone. So as you may have guessed, I am in my Judas cosplay, because today I am talking about Jesus Christ Superstar. The spectacular musical that I very much love. And today, to celebrate Easter, I am going to be reimagining Jesus Christ Superstar. I am going to be imagining how I would set this musical, what I would change. Hint, hint, there's a lot. It's not too much, really. What I would keep the same. Gethsemane. I'm just going to say it right now. Gethsemane is staying exactly the same. And what things I would do to update it for a more modern audience and to make it more relevant to current times. And also because I really love the 2014 Swedish cast version. So I think we need to do more of that here in the UK. What are my intentions with this then? Well, other than amusing myself and anyone who watches this video, I also want to delve into some deeper themes of Jesus Christ Superstar. Themes that are sometimes touched upon, but often not deeply enough for me. The two main ones are darkness. I talk about this a lot in my Peter Pan videos, and today I am bringing it into Jesus Christ Superstar. There is a lot of darkness in this musical that I think gets overlooked because people remember the spectacle of it. They remember Hosanna, they remember Superstar. People might remember Jesus up on the cross at the end and how powerful a moment that was, but really when you think of Jesus Christ Superstar, you're thinking of Jesus Christ Superstar, and you're thinking of Judas prancing around and singing all his songs, as he is wont to do. Look at me prancing! Someone fetch me a tambourine. Where is my dead boyfriend? Oh no, he's dead. The other theme that I'm going to be leaning quite heavily into when reimagining my version of Jesus Christ Superstar is, of course, the queerness of the piece. It has just always struck me as a very LGBT story. Jesus and Judas, 100%. And actually, I'm taking it one step further because my ideal relationship status is a poly trio. And therefore, we are going to be leaning into some of the poly trio between Jesus, Judas, and Mary as well. Also, small side note, please go and check out all of the archive of our own fanfic that there is. There is Jesus Christ Superstar specific fanfic, and there is also just poly trio, Judas, Jesus and Mary, and Jesus and Judas. It's very, very good, and a lot of it is quite well written. There is a lot of smut. If you're not into that, filter that out. But if you're into it, there is a lot. And if not, there is still plenty of fluffy, sweet romance with a lot of angst and, well, several bad endings. But there are some happy endings as well. So yes, please go and... happy ending. So yeah, please go and check out the archive of our own fanfic. It is very, very good. And no, I have not written any about Jesus and Judas just yet. I might have to one day. But moving on. Let's do it then. Let's commence. Let's dive into Jesus Christ Superstar and reimagine it Morku's way. A quick trigger warning before we get into this video. I'm going to be talking about a dark telling of the Jesus Christ Superstar musical. This means I will be talking about very bloody, gruesome injuries and death. I'll be talking about a character who takes their own life. And in this retelling, I am also going to be mentioning homophobia, transphobia, and anti-LGBT movements and things like that. Nothing in any particular gratuitous detail, but if it's just not something that you are ready to listen to right now, I would recommend skipping this video, go watch some of my other content, and come back to this one if you are ever feeling in the right headspace. To start with then, I am going to set the scene. What are the costumes like for our main players, and where is this based? What kind of show are we doing? Well, check out the 2012 Arena Tour DVD, which has Tim Minchin and Ben Forster. Ben Forster, by the way, is the best Jesus of all time, and Tim Minchin is a living legend. So check out the DVD of these two. It's also available on YouTube somewhere and Amazon as well if you want to check this out. Now, they had a very interesting concept, which I am going to keep a lot of when I'm talking about Jesus Christ Superstar today. So I want to set it in modern day. Maybe in a fictional country, a bit like Genovia in The Princess Diary. I really want to use social media as well. A lot of the shows that I've seen with modern day have big screens up and projections and things, and they're constantly showing you updates on like Jesus and the apostles and the hashtags and the news articles and things that are going on about them. I definitely want to use that in my version of the show as well. I think that's a really good idea. Judas is going to be wearing predominantly red. This is a colour to represent sort of love and passion, but also anger as well. I also want to give Judas some silver as well. Maybe not an item of clothing, maybe just some jewellery like I've got on here, little bits and pieces here and there. So he's got the silver, and that's tugging on a hint of things that are to come, you know, Judas taking the silver, that kind of thing. Although, of course, this is modern day, so therefore Judas isn't going to get pieces of silver, he's going to get banknotes, that kind of thing. So the silver is in fact what he's wearing, that's that representation there. I also want Judas very specifically to have one piece of white. Perhaps a white stripe down the side of his wet look pants, or even a big sort of white flower motif on the back of his jacket. Something like that. I need him to have one piece of white white. And this is to symbolize that he is loved and touched by Jesus. Moving on to Jesus then, Jesus predominantly is going to be in white. So white being a symbol of sort of purity and virtue and that kind of thing, and even the holiness, he's definitely going to be wearing predominantly white, particularly maybe a white shirt, that kind of thing, and then he can have a darker pair of pants on because, well, he and Judas are going to be fighting a lot. He probably shouldn't be wearing pale coloured pants. I also want Jesus to be wearing flecks of gold as well. Perhaps it can be in his makeup, through his hair, it can be on his wrist, bits of his jewellery, maybe a stripe down his pants, that kind of thing, and maybe a golden cross too. Something on him that's just gold. So he's got the white and the gold. But Jesus is also going to have two other flashes of colour as well. He is going to have a flash of red, symbolising how he is loved by and touched by Judas. Similar to Judas, this could be a stripe somewhere, it could be a piece of detailing on his shirt, it could be a big flower motif on the back, anything like that, but it has to be the same shade of red as Judas wears. And the other colour that Jesus is going to wear is blue, and this is to symbol his connection and love for Mary. And again, this is going to be a piece, it could be a part of the flower motif on his back, so there's some red, some blue, one for each of them. It could be a part of him, it could be a part of his cuff, or again down the side of his pants. Whatever it is, somewhere prominent where people will notice it, but it's not distracting from his overall white and gold aesthetic. And finally, Mary. She is, of course, going to be predominantly in blue. The blue is marking her sadness, but also her calmness, and how she is the one who tries to soothe people through the problems, be that Jesus or Judas or Peter later on, or the other apostles. But it also is a symbol that she has a sadness in her from the beginning until the end, where, you know, it gets worse at the end. But hey, at least she's still alive! I also thought that Mary could perhaps have some tiny details of yellow, symbolising hope, and the hope that she always has for the future and for calming things down and making things better. And then she as well, of course, is going to have a touch of white somewhere about her person, either as a stripe or a piece of the motif on her back. I do quite like the idea of the three main players, Judas, Jesus and Mary, all having a sort of flower motif on the back of their shirts or dresses or jackets or whatever it is they're wearing. So Jesus would have a part blue, part red flower motif, Mary's would be white, and so would Judas's. Alright, we've set the scene, we've discussed the costumes, let's dive in and talk about the show itself. Welcome to Morky's Jesus Christ Superstar. Strap yourselves in, folks. As the overture begins, the audience is taken through screens and shots and things on the stage. They are shown where we are set. They are shown flashes of news headlines, of social media. We'll see the social media belonging to Judas, to Jesus, to Mary, to various other apostles, to people who are not apostles, who are just following these people. They'll see the trends, the hashtags, the things that are popping up. And there'll be all kinds of videos and clips of marches and demonstrations and graffiti and things like that, and how Jesus is building this movement. There'll be lots of references to pride and predominantly LGBT rights and various things like that. So that is the direction we're taking for this show. And then we have the first song. All the apostles and Jesus have come to the stage, and Judas arrives next, and he is going to interrupt everything, and he is going to start singing Heaven on Their Minds, which I'm not changing in the slightest because damn, that song is just fantastic. What a way to open your show. I would, however, like to propose a slight edit, which is going to become a reoccurring theme all the way through my version of the show. Now, usually, Jesus Christ Superstar is performed almost in a sort of opera style. There is no dialogue, there are no scenes, there's no acting bits like that. It is all a song, then a song, then a song, then a song. There isn't any intermittent dialogue between characters. In fact, nobody really speaks to each other at all. Everything is done in song. And so I, in my little theatre kid brain, have decided I want to change this. And I am going to make one big overhauling change to my version of Jesus Christ Superstar. And I am going to be adding dialogue. The first section of which is coming right after Judas finishes singing Heaven on Their Minds. So Judas has done the wonderful, powerful note, it's all gone sour. Don't worry, I'm not going to be singing in this video. And then they have a brief piece of dialogue between themselves where Judas is concerned. Jesus is pulling away from him and he wants to understand why. The man seems sad. They've never been this far apart before. And Jesus is being distant and sad, which doesn't help. He's not giving him many answers, and Judas is getting frustrated by this. And Judas demands to know what is going on, what is happening, why is Jesus pulling away? And at some point I would like to throw in Jesus saying something along the lines of, what seems impossible among men is possible with God. And that's Jesus sort of hinting that he has to go, he has to die and go to be in heaven in order for their mission to be successful. And Judas questions him and says, wait, what do you mean? And Jesus might seem to be about to be spilling the crucifixial beans, as it were, and then they are interrupted by, what's the buzz? Now, I am making a big change in this number, because while I understand that having Jesus surrounded by all these apostles who are just repeating the same questions over and over and over again, it's really hammering in this idea that Jesus is surrounded by people who will not leave him alone, and he feels like everything's going on and over and over and over and round and round and round, and he's getting these same questions nagging and over again, and he has no answers he wants to give. For an audience listening to it, it does get kind of boring to listen to "What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening" at least 8 times in a row at any given moment. So, the big change I'm making here is I'm going to give them more lyrics. They can say "What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening" twice, maybe, and then they can say something else. And then they can come back to "What's the buzz? Tell me what's happening." So there's going to be more lyrics there. 100%. I also want to have a much longer pause after Jesus has shouted, "Not one of you!" and to add more reactions to that. Rather than going straight into Mary singing "Everything's all right," I want to see the apostles reacting to this. You know, they might have seen him angry before, but not so much directed at them. And suddenly he's just burst out with this shout at them. And so more reactions there and just a pause of quiet while Jesus sort of realizes, oh, I just had an outburst that wasn't necessarily necessary. And then, before "Everything's all right" does begin, I might have Jesus speak a few lines from Gethsemane. Things like, 3 years, I tried for 3 years. It feels like 30. I tried. You know, things like that, to really just set in immediately that this is what he's thinking, and it's going to be a recurring theme throughout the rest of the show, leading up to his song, Gethsemane. After this outburst, both Judas and Mary are going to actively try to get through the apostles to get to Jesus, but Mary gets there first. And this, of course, does not make Judas any happier. And then we come to Mary's song, "Everything's All Right," which is going to have another change, very similar to the change I made in "What's the Buzz?" We are giving the poor woman some more lines to say. Jesus Christ. Literally. She is being comforting, she is being soothing, she, bless her, deserves some more lines to say. So yeah, we're going to give Mary some new lines as well. Side note, I wish someone would look at me the way that Ben Forster's Jesus looks at Tim Minchin's Judas in that scene. Carrying on. I also desperately want to edit one specific lyric here, and that is when Jesus sings to Mary and Judas and he says, "You'll be lost, you'll be so sorry when I'm gone." And I'm changing just one word of this, just because I want to, and the word I'm changing is "so." And instead, I'm going to have Jesus sing, "You'll be lost, you'll be so damned sorry when I'm gone." Partly because I love hearing Jesus swearing, and also because it's a reference to damned for all time later. And that's why Judas is worrying particularly about that specific word, because Jesus drops it early on and he's saying, "You'll be so damned sorry when I'm gone." And then later on, when he's doing something that he knows is going to affect all of them, and he's so worried that he's not doing the right thing, and what does Jesus think and what does he even want? I don't understand. What if I'm damned? At this point in the show, Judas is now almost certain that Jesus has been pulling away from him so that he can go and spend more time with Mary, and that his affection and his love that he once had for Judas is now solely just for Mary. And Judas is probably open to being, you know, part of a trio or one of two people, but he is now getting jealous and insecure and scared because he thinks that rather than loving them both, he thinks that Jesus is quite literally pulling away and only going to Mary. He's also scared about what Jesus means by the whole "when I'm gone" thing, but he has a lot of things going on in his head right now. And because Jesus in this song is accepting Mary's comfort and not listening to Judas, he is now completely consumed by this jealousy and this idea that, yeah, he is moving his love from me to her. He doesn't like me anymore. Poor Judas. He just wants to be loved. Judas will then huffily and grumpily turn his back on Jesus being comforted by Mary and walk off the stage, probably lighting a cigarette while he does so. And then we have "Jesus Must Die." This is the song that the priests usually sing. Now, in this version, I'm going to have the priests instead be high-up members of the police task force and the police who are trying to control this riotous group and who are trying to get their hands on Jesus, and of course some politicians as well, ideally some corrupt ones too. There's definitely going to be an air of you can't necessarily trust the people in charge, the government, the police, that kind of thing. They are acting under their own whims and for their own gain. They're not necessarily acting for the good of the people, and they don't really care about the marginalized and minoritized groups. I might even add a little bit of dialogue to set the scene, as the apostles and Jesus and Mary have all moved out of the way from their song, and the scene is setting for this big room where they're having a big conference with the politicians and the police. I'm thinking maybe have some dialogue while they're walking in amongst themselves, talking about the woke agenda and things like that, using all these trigger words, and maybe the screens can show their social media now and their side of the internet, where it's showing things about this woke crowd and how dangerous it is, and what about the children and all of this stuff. So really getting you into their mindset there with just a few lines of dialogue about that, and then we go into their song. And then at the end of their song, I think that the entire venue that they're in, either outside or inside, is going to be taken over by protesters as they start to get into the Hosanna song. I want there to be riots of colour, lots of flags waving, all the different LGBT flags, lots of pride flags, maybe a big pride flag at the back, sort of a la Les Mis with their big red flag at the back, and all of this riotous stuff going on. And to the priests, this is proving their point. It is everything that they're scared of, and it's happening all around them. Within the social media pictures, I want to see pictures of previous pride parades and protests and things like that. We see Judas maybe engaging in some anger where he's throwing things, getting into fights. We see Mary and her pictures. We see everyone tagging in pictures of Jesus and talking to people. And I really want to see pictures of Judas and Jesus together at a pride march previously, from some years previously, maybe a year, maybe 2 years beforehand. So some pictures like that, just to really paint a picture of what their relationship has been over the years as it leads up to this point where they are now. Also, idea. I would like to hold the music right after everyone has sung that line, "Hey JC, JC, won't you die for me?" And after they've sung "Die for me," have the music just sort of swell to a pause, like it's holding its breath, and have everyone freeze in their tableau, like with their fists in the air and they're waving their flags and they're mid-motion and they all sort of grind to a halt. And this might not actually be what the crowd is really singing, but whatever it is, this is what Jesus has heard. And it might be that that's what he's heard because he's just thinking about this plan that God has and what's coming for him. It might really be what they're saying, but for me, I've always seen it as more, this is Jesus imagining what they're saying. He has misheard, or it's just his brain playing tricks on him and him remembering what's coming. Maybe he had his back slightly turned to the audience as he was dancing with the crowd and waving maybe a megaphone and things and waving a flag. And then as they've sung, "Won't you die for me?" there's a pause and he sort of turns and you can see on his face that he's heard this word and he's now thinking it through. And as he thinks, he sort of might close his eyes and bring his arms out to the side, really slowly rising them up. And in this tableau of darkness, the lights will slowly turn and fade to red as he brings his arms up to the side in that crucifixion pose that he will be in later on. And he holds his arms up just for a beat while he's thinking. And it's a way of showing to the audience what Jesus is thinking about and how much it's scaring him. As he holds his arms up there and maybe closes his eyes, the song comes back in again. The red lights fade back up, everything is normal, and they're all singing "Hosanna, Superstar." And they come and they rush at him and they lift him up. And as they lift him up to sort of hoist him onto their shoulders, for them, they're celebrating. It's a moment of victory that he is up in the crucifixion pose. And to him, it's just another moment of, oh God, this is what's about to happen to me. And as they're singing "Superstar," you can see Jesus starting to have a real panic about this now. So Hosanna finishes, and here I would like to add just a tiny bit of dialogue again as well. I would like the song to finish, "Hosanna, Superstar," Jesus is up there, almost like he's on the cross, and the song finish and everyone is sort of cheering, and then slowly through the cheering as it fades, you hear Jesus trying to say, put me down, let go of me." And he's not angry, he's just panicked and doesn't want to be touched. And they do set him down, but they don't seem to really be listening to him because they're too busy cheering. And then we'll have a little bit more dialogue, this time from Simon, as Simon approaches, coming through everybody as the trumpets start to begin his song, and he's going to be shouting about power and glory and about how they're winning and they're doing all this amazing stuff and how it's going to be great. And that's amping everyone up into Simon's song. And as he approaches Jesus, he's going to start singing, and Jesus is still in this sort of panic state of imagining, and he's had flashes of what's going to happen to him, and he's just not touching anyone but trying not to show it too much because they're all so happy and he does care about them and he still wants them to be happy. I might add a little bit of dialogue in there as well before Jesus starts singing, where he might say predominantly to Simon but also to everyone else something along the lines of, "You must love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. Fighting cannot change hearts, but love..." And then he can't quite finish that sentence because it has a lot of connotations for him and the people around him, like particularly Mary and Judas who might be listening. But then he goes into his song and says, "None of you would understand. Neither you nor Judas nor the 12, none of you understand what power and glory is." And maybe Judas hearing this can think that he literally is being told, you don't understand me. And conveniently, Mary's name is left off that list. So that will add a little bit of a niggle to Judas as well. After all that, then there's a calm moment where Jesus will be the leader that he is, and he will lead all of his apostles off the stage. And all of those people, the apostles, Jesus, Judas, and Mary, will exit the stage, leaving it open for Pilate's dream. And my thought for this is that we'll come to Pilate being a politician or the chief of police, one of those things. I'm thinking probably quite a high up politician. And he will actually be asleep. I want it to be a real dream that he wakes up from and starts describing. And he is going to be asleep with his head down. He has fallen asleep in the meeting room where we saw all the priests, aka the politicians and the police and things, meeting earlier for their Jesus Must Die song. He has fallen asleep working at the table. There are papers scattered everywhere. Perhaps his assistant comes in while he's describing his dream, that kind of thing. And we might see some flashes of the social media and things as well, just showing how his brain is getting all worked up and worried about this. But then his assistant will mention, you know, buck up, come on, you've got to show face because we're going to the temple to have this meeting, this big party, this gathering. Now, I can't decide if I want the temple to be the place where they're meeting and therefore just have everyone flood in there while he's waking up, or have them walk somewhere else on the stage and we have all the lights come up and the scene is set around them. So either way, they move to or are already in the temple, which then immediately pours into the temple sequence, which comes next. I want there to be a longer pause. God, how many times have I said that this episode? A longer pause after Jesus in the temple has shouted, "Get out!" And everyone is scrambling and running away. Maybe reporters are snapping pictures, that kind of thing. I definitely want there to be photos because they can be incorporated into the social media. You know, Jesus has gone mad, it's a cult, and he's, you know, breaking things. Woke agenda, blah, 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 blah. So definitely some photos and things like that. And also just another moment for Jesus to just be like gasping for breath and he can't quite control himself anymore. Now, he has none of his apostles around him at this point. There's no Mary, there's no Judas, there's nothing and no one. Just him, surrounded by all these people who hate him and everything he stands for, who have now scattered, and he's left there. And so he comes down to the middle of the stage and perhaps sits down exhausted and sort of rests a head in his hands. And maybe we get another moment again of him saying, I tried 3 years, it feels like 30. I tried. And then he has a hallucinatory dream as we go into the Leppers song. We can utilize the lights and the screens and the projections at this point to really show that he is dreaming and slipping into first memories and then full-on hallucinations. So it starts with memories of him helping and healing people. Maybe there's some social media pictures of him helping and healing people. And, you know, right at the beginning when the progress was good and everyone was saying nice things about him. And some of the lepers come on and it's a memory of them saying, you know, see my eyes I can hardly see me stand I can hardly walk. And in his dream, Jesus will sit and he'll reach for them and maybe stand and try to heal some of them and go around. But as more of them come, I want to make this song extra creepy. I want to play with sort of discordant notes and things, have some of them singing slightly off tune, a little bit sharp, some a little bit flat and things like that. Really hammer in that this is creepy and nightmarish. And the more of them appear, the more zombie-like they become, sort of undead, blood-dripping eyes staggering towards him, reaching and clawing, that kind of thing. Really dark, harrowing, a memory that has turned nightmare because of all this stress and emotion and fear that's building up inside him, and there's nowhere for it to go because he doesn't want to confide in anyone because it would scare them so much. But he's scared. Death is literally coming for him. It is just around the corner, and all of these dream creatures are like the vision of death, a metaphor almost for death coming up to him and trying to get at him, clawing at him. So it builds and builds and builds, and there's flashes of red light and all of the lights are going crazy, and maybe there's more social media and things, and it's just spiraling. And as the world is spinning around and around and around him and things are getting worse, the nightmare is intensifying. He gets surrounded by all of these creatures and he's lifted up. And there's so many of them that it's almost like he's crowd surfing. And as they're lifting him up into the air, they drag his arms back and he's forced back into that crucifixion position again. And you see his eyes go wide as he realizes this is the end. This is where it all ends. And then they encompass all on him and they drop him carefully into their midst and he's covered and buried in them like this is his death, and then he is gone. And then from inside their midst, we hear him scream, "Heal yourselves!" And that's when they all scatter. And then onto the stage, looking for Jesus, separately on different sides, come Judas and Mary. They both spot him, and they move easily through these lepers and nightmarish visions because, of course, they're not real and they can't see them. And they manage to sort of rouse Jesus from these nightmarish visions and sort of maybe panic attack that he's having. Judas might catch him under the arms and sort of stand him up. Mary might take his face, hold his hand, that kind of thing. Hashtag polytrio! And then we have Mary's reprise of the song, Everything's All Right. And I'm editing a little bit here. So Mary is going to start singing it, saying, try not to get worried, try not to turn onto, and then Judas is going to join in. And this is a showing that he is trying things her way. He's not being argumentative, he's not shouting, he's not full of anger and rage and frustration. He is just trying to show care and calmness and soothing towards Jesus. So Judas will join in with the "don't you know, everything's all right, everything's fine" line. And this, because it's the two of them, does genuinely calm Jesus down. And as he fully rouses himself and wakes up and sees the two people that he cares about the most surrounding him and soothing him, he then will sing his "and I think I shall sleep well tonight, let the world turn without me tonight." And then he will walk off stage by himself. He will sort of dismiss them, but not unkindly. He might place a hand on both their shoulders in thanks, maybe kiss both their cheeks, but then he will leave by himself, leaving Judas and Mary alone. And this is the bit that you're probably not going to like, and I am not sorry. I am turning "I don't know how to love him" into a duet. Hashtag polytrio. Judas and Mary can hear each other while they're singing this song. This isn't a two separate people singing about the same thing that they can't both hear. No, they are both going to be explaining to themselves, the audience, and each other everything that they are saying, so they can both hear each other through this entire song. The idea I had for divvying it up was this. So, "I don't know how to love him" will immediately start together, very quietly, sort of like a whisper, almost like they're not really singing just yet. And then Judas is going to have the "what to do" line, because he's the one who's lost. He has no idea what to do, what's going on. And then Mary will sing the line "how to move him." I want them both to sing the "I've been changed, really changed" line, because that is true for both of them. I think that's fair. And I also think they could both sing the "in these past few days when I've seen myself, I've looked like someone else." And then we can have Judas very specifically to Mary singing "I don't know how to take this." Because up till now he is only suspected, but now he is getting the truth of it. Mary and Jesus are desperately in love as well, and he does not know how to take this piece of information. So "I don't know how to take this" is Judas to Mary in particular. And then we'll have Mary coming back with "I don't see why he moves me," trying to explain to Judas, "I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to fall in love with this man. It just happened." Which of course Judas begrudgingly can also understand. Mary can then probably continue into "he's a man." So she's saying to Judas, "I don't see why he moves me. He's a man." And then Judas can go in with "he's just a man," but he doesn't mean it. He of course is saying this, he's just a man, but they both know that he is more than that to them and to a lot of other people. He is, this holy son of God, and more importantly, he is this wonderful person that they both fall in love with. Mary then will keep her refrain of "and I've had so many men before in many different ways," because that is her personal story and that's a big part of her. And also Judas singing that would be very funny, but I don't want to take that away from Mary. That's a big part of her story. So Mary keeps those lines. And then I think they could both sing "should I bring him down?" Judas can then on his own say "should I scream and shout?" because that's what he's been trying to do this whole time, but he's questioning it now. It's not been working. And then Mary comes in saying "should I speak of love?" And then they can both join in together. So Judas has said "should I scream and shout?" Mary said "should I speak of love?" And then they both say "let my feelings out." They both want to, but they just can't. And then in a probably risky and controversial move, I am giving Judas the first refrain of "I never thought I'd come to this," because he is the first one that breaks. His anger has been bubbling on the surface more this whole time. Mary is the calm one, he is the passion and the anger. So I think it would be right that Judas is the first one to snap and break in this situation. It's emotional turmoil and he just sings the first "I never thought I'd come to this," because he didn't, and it's, it's hard. And then they can both join in with "what's it all about?" And then I'm giving Mary her own piece again where she sings "don't you think it's rather funny? I should be in this position up until he scares me so." And then they will both sing "I never thought I'd come to this" this time, and I'd like to add some little harmonies in there as well. So Mary's going high and Judas for once is not necessarily going quite as high. Then they can both sing "what's it all about?" and then both again go into "yet if he said he loved me," because they're both thinking this through now, like, if I said that I loved him, what if he said he loved me? And Judas' response to this is "I'd be lost." And Mary has the line "I'd be frightened." They'll both then sing "I couldn't cope, no couldn't cope," perhaps one then the other or both at the same time, either way. Mary would then say "I'd turn my head." Judas would say "I'd walk away," because of them all, Judas is the one that storms away the most. And then they would both sing "I wouldn't want to know," although realistically that is probably both of them just sort of trying to avoid thinking about it because it makes them feel vulnerable. They would want to know, really. And then this time it's Judas who will pick up the "He scares me so" line, mimicking what Mary had said earlier, because he's thought about that and he agrees, no, that scares me, this is scaring me to think about. And then either Mary by herself or both of them can sing "I want him so," and then they both have the final line, "I love him so." But I really like the idea of, again, playing with the harmonies. So Judas would sing the usual "I love him so," and then maybe have Mary going up a little bit, maybe even really high, going "I love him so," you know, really high, so you've got that little juxtaposition there. Think the end of One Hand, One Heart from West Side Story. After the duet of "I Don't Know How to Love Him," there can be a moment of attempted understanding between Judas and Mary, particularly on Mary's end. She might reach out to touch Judas's arm the same way that Jesus had done earlier to the both of them, but Judas just still can't quite do it yet, so he might shrug her off and turn away. But Mary will definitely exit the stage, possibly feeling a little bit distraught about this, leaving Judas by himself to make a really bad decision. And then we have this really epic guitar solo, which to me has always shown the sort of twanging, bouncing thoughts going around through Judas's head at this moment. So I think that maybe after he's watched Mary leave, he could sit down and start to scroll through his phone, maybe lighting another cigarette. And using the screens again to utilize that, we can see the social media that he is browsing through. And we can see his profile, maybe he scrolls back to old pictures of him and Jesus, maybe them at Pride, moments of them as a couple, things like that. Then he sees the headlines and things are getting worse. He reads news articles and people complaining about the woke agenda and people saying that they're going to come to their protests and they're going to throw things and that they're going to make it violent and incite violence and things like that. And just a lot of hate and fear-mongering, and he is clearly getting worried by this. Maybe he doesn't even manage to finish the cigarette and just sort of chucks it away or stubs it out or something, and he in that moment makes up his mind. And at this point, I think that maybe the priests, so the politicians and the police, they can come in somewhere else on the stage. Perhaps they're doing interviews, perhaps they've just left a courthouse, something like that, and they come onto the stage and Judas takes his opportunity. And then we have another one of my favourite songs, Damned for All Time / Blood Money. All of this song is fantastic and amazing. I'm not going to play with it at all. I think it's just fantastic and I want to keep that, just hype up the drama, really sell it, lots of like creepy and intense vibes. And Judas in this really vulnerable state, just giving away this information that he's not even sure he should as the words come out of his mouth. He almost can't believe he's saying them. And then after he has spilled the beans and told them about Gethsemane, I want Judas and the whole stage, particularly Judas though, to be slowly bathed in this red, blood-soaked light. So this is going to be set in the modern day. So while I'm not going to be having Judas be handed pieces of silver, I'm also not going to have them click some things on a screen and give him money in a transfer. No, we're going with banknotes. I want to utilize bits of what the Swedish cast did, and this time have all of the priests throw the money over Judas. So it's going to be a lot more than 12 pieces of silver. It's going to be something more like $12,000, that kind of thing. So they are going to be throwing these notes, not real, by the way, in case they go into the audience, completely fake banknotes of this fake country's currency, and they're going to just be yeeting them all over Judas's head. They're going to be falling on him like rain as this red, blood-soaked light comes down. So quite literally, the audience, we are seeing blood money. It's blood rain, raining down over his head. And Judas, of course, is covering his head like it's hail, and he can't bear to look at it, and he's regretting this decision that he's already made, but it's too late, it's too late, it's too late. And maybe as the chorus comes in and they're saying, well done, Judas, good old Judas, they can have money as well, and they can add to it, and it can just be flying everywhere in the air, this blood-soaked money. Also, something else that I want to play with and repeat a few times in this version of the show is after Judas has said Gethsemane, we're going to have a little bit of a longer pause. I'm adding quite a few of those, aren't I? Longer pause before the chorus comes in with the well done Judas, good old Judas. The money is about to be thrown on him in all this blood-soaked rain. And as he has said Gethsemane, the red lights have come up and they're about to throw the money on him. We get a flash somewhere in the background, maybe on the screens, maybe it's like a big shadow, and it's of Jesus on the cross. You can't see in detail, it might just be a shadow or an outline, but we have a flash. He says the word Gethsemane and just flash, a shadow, and then it's gone. Not even 1 second long, just boop, gone. And then we got the blood-soaked rain and the money. The next thing that we have is the Last Supper. And while I'm setting this in modern day, I still really want the table. It's just a really cool, iconic piece of imagery, especially if when the lights come up, everyone is placed exactly where they are in that famous picture. As the lights fade up, before the song starts, I would also like to add a little bit of dialogue between the apostles while they're starting to eat and pour their drinks and stuff. They're talking about how they think things are going well, the riots, the protests, they need to amp things up, they're excited for where things are going. And Jesus just looks so tired in their midst. He is exhausted and he knows what what is coming. And then Judas is going to arrive. Now, I can't decide, so maybe you guys can help me out. I'm in two minds. Part of me thinks that Judas could arrive in an extra layer, like a hoodie or a big sort of baggy coat around him, almost like he's hiding from the shame of what he's done. But I'm also thinking that Judas could arrive with one layer less. So if he had, say, a jacket over his shirt, this time he arrives in just the shirt or just a t-shirt as a sort of symbol that he's bearing his soul and this is it. This is what he's done. This is him. So I'll let you guys decide what you think about that. Let me know in the comments down below. Wrap Judas up or have him laid bare? Bearing in mind that while him and Jesus are arguing and fighting later on, he could of course lose layers while he's fighting, so we could do that. We could have both. I definitely want the fight between Jesus and Judas to be very physical. I want them to fight on the Last Supper table, break it, definitely break it at some point, and be very, very physical, definitely shoving each other. At least one or both of them should end up on the floor at one point. And then comes my next bit of added dialogue. So as Judas starts to storm away for the first time in this song, and the apostles begin to sing, "Look at all my trials and tribulations, what's in the bread, it's gone to my head," I want them to stop after the first run through. I don't want them to repeat it, just do it one time and let the rest of the music play for those remaining bars, and that's where we're going to have dialogue between Judas and Jesus instead. Because again, I want to have them ramping up the argument. It does work when you watch the show normally, but what you get really when you look at it is they have this massive argument, they're shouting, screaming at each other through song, and then Judas storms away and the apostles all sing about, you know, they're sad and things are drowning in a pool of wine and what's in the bread, it's gone to my head, everything was fine this morning, and then Judas turns around and comes back and rejoins the argument. And while that is fun to watch and the actors do a fantastic job of portraying their emotions on their face, I just think it'd be more fun to add some dialogue between them, which can then ramp up and turn back into the song and the argument again. So I want Judas and Jesus to argue after the apostles have been singing this song. Judas has started to walk away and then he turns and he starts to speak. Something along the lines of like, what is going on? I don't understand. I want to understand. What are you doing? What are you talking about? What is going on? What is happening? And then I want Jesus to respond in a quite vague and very poetic, but also like a riddle kind of way, because he just doesn't want to tell this person what is going to happen. If Jesus tells Judas, hey, I'm about to get crucified, he knows Judas will do anything and everything to stop this from happening. And it's God's plan. He can't interfere with it, and so he doesn't tell him. Again, adding to Judas's frustration. So Jesus might say something along the lines of, ask and it shall be given to you. And Judas's response will be, I'm asking for nothing but answers. You know, I don't want anything from you, just the truth. And then Jesus might say something like, seek and you will find. And Judas' response to that might be, I'm right here. You know, I'm here. You can talk to me too. And then Jesus might go on to finish with something like, knock and the door will be opened to you. And then Judas will come in again with something like, I don't understand. I want to understand. I don't understand. I don't know. I don't know. And that's harkening back to his I don't know how to love you thing, but he can't say it. He can't say, I don't know how to love you. He can't get that word out. And then I have this sort of idea to show that Jesus is frustrated and trying to show that this is bigger than everything and he can't talk about it, but it's so big. I want Jesus to say something like, I have overcome the world. Like, why can't you see? Why can't you just trust me and understand that I'm going to do something big and it's going to be important? Just let me do it. And then Judas gets pissed at that, and that's where he will start coming back in with the, you sad, pathetic man, look what you brought us to. I also want them to really fight, full-on physical fight. I love how the Swedish cast did this. I love how Ben and Tim did this in the 2012 Arena Tour. Lots of physical fighting, shoving each other. Both of them, or one or other, particularly Judas, ends up on the floor because Jesus is really trying to show his power at this point, and they definitely fight on the table and break the table. I want that Last Supper table to be broken, at least in half, if not in more places. And then right at the end, of course, Judas is going to storm away, storming off stage. And at this point, Jesus is left angry, but also desperately upset. And he is on the verge of tears. And even he doesn't really know whether he wants to cry out of desperate anger and frustration or bitter, bitter sadness. At this point, Mary will then usher all of the apostles away, just sort of thinking, no, he needs space, let's leave. And they'll all exit the stage, leaving it empty and quiet for him to do Gethsemane. I would like to have just a little bit longer on the pause of quiet before we start Gethsemane as well. I keep adding long pauses. I am making this musical longer with dialogue and long pauses. It's what I'm doing. And then we have Gethsemane. Gethsemane is my favourite song in all of musical theatre. Well, no, Gethsemane as sung by Ben Forster, and only Ben Forster, is my favourite musical theatre song of all time. So Gethsemane, I'm not changing at all. Everything, I'm keeping it exactly the same. Exactly like Ben. Just do Ben, and it'll be perfect. Nothing is being changed about this for me. Love this song. In terms of lighting, I had this idea that this song takes place while the sun is setting. So while Jesus starts singing Gethsemane, the lights are sort of warm while he's just tired, and as he gets further into the frustration and the anger and the fear, it turns to a warmer orange and then a sort of more red. And by the very end of the song, when he's singing, now, do it now, before I change my mind, he can be putting himself into that crucifixion pose again, and that red light will bathe him once again. And that is mingling from the setting sun, but it's also that symbol of the crucifixion is coming and it's going to be blood red. And then we come to the arrest. And I'm going to make another change right off the bat here. Some different versions have done this already. I'm going to remove Judas's line of, there he is, they're all asleep, the fools. Because I think it's much more powerful if he enters in silence and we can maybe see the shadows of the people, the priests, the police and everything, behind him right at the back. So they're out of the way. They're not shown. They're just shadowy shapes. And he doesn't sing or say anything at all. And he just approaches Jesus in the quiet. I think that is much more powerful. So we're taking out that line. But then, as he gets closer to Jesus, I am going to add some more lines of dialogue. These are going to be whispered and heartfelt, both of them on the verge of tears, drawn with so much emotion. Jesus because of everything he's just sung in Gethsemane, Judas because he is scared about what he's done, what is happening, and how much he loves this man and what the reaction is going to be. So Judas will harken back again to I don't know how to love him, and he will, as he approaches Jesus, he'll be whispering, I don't know, I don't, and he can't say it. And then I want to play on their relationship a little more and just how well they do know each other. And I'll have Jesus saying, you are not. Before Jesus can finish his sentence, Judas is going to continue his train of thought and just be saying, damned, damned for. But before he can finish that thought, we go back to Jesus where he says, no one is good except God alone. And by this, he doesn't mean that everyone is bad. He means that no one is wholly good. No one person can be perfect except for God. To which Judas, still on his train of thought, will be saying, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And then I like the idea of Jesus comforting Judas this time and sort of mirroring what he said. And while Judas is saying, I don't know, I don't, Jesus comes in and says, I do, I know. And then Judas can ask something like, but how? Something like that. And at this point, they'll be getting closer together and Jesus will take more of a step forward, a deliberate step into Judas's space. He might initiate touching him at this point. He'll take a hand or his cheek, possibly a cheek. I like the idea of a cheek. And Jesus will say something like, with all my heart and all my soul and all my mind, I know. And at this point, they're both definitely crying. And this is where they will have their kiss. And we are going full Swedish with this one. Full Swedish kiss. I would also like to have a flash of that red light and the crucifixion shadow again as well. Like from Blood Money, I want to have that quick flash, half a second, as they kiss, as their lips touch, flash, but then we carry on with the rest of the scene. And then, because I'm a twink and I love it, Jesus will start to sing his line, Judas, must you betray me with a... But he never gets to say the word kiss because they go back in and they kiss for a second time. Because fuck it, you're about to die, snog your boyfriend. And again, as their lips touch, we have that red light and a flash of the crucifixion, that shadow in the background. But this time, it's accompanied by the flash of a camera. And we see that paparazzi are surrounding them with the police and these people coming to arrest Jesus. There are paparazzi, people with cameras and microphones, and someone has just taken a picture of this betrayal moment. So onto the stage start pouring all of these police, the arresting officers, apostles trying to get in their way, find out what's going on, other people filming on their phones, reporters, journalists, people with cameras, things like that. Judas is ripped away from Jesus. They are pulled apart. They are reaching for each other. It's a very harrowing, horrible moment. Jesus is taken. He is put in handcuffs. He is arrested and led away, maybe around the stage while the people are singing in the next song. And while the apostles are trying to get in there and get to him, Mary gets knocked over. And at this point, I would like Judas to rush to Mary to help her up, to really show that he is having a change of heart. He is changing as a person in this scene here. So at this point, Jesus is being led away. He's being arrested. Maybe we see him being carted around, getting interviewed, microphones being thrust at him. Obviously, he's not replying. He doesn't say anything. The police are around him. You can see the priests, aka the politicians and the corrupt people and things like that. They're all coming around. Maybe you even get some anti-protesters and they've got the like straight boy flags and all that rubbish and they're coming out. There's pointy pointing, there's laughing, maybe they throw things, that kind of thing. So all of that as he's led through and around the stage as the setting sort of changes, getting ready for the next bits of scenes. While all this is going on, I want there to be more flashes of social media as well, all of these articles coming out about Jesus. And at this point, we will show pictures of that kiss, the second kiss, where someone flashed their camera and took a picture of Judas and Jesus kissing in the Garden of Gethsemane. And there'll be laughter about that in the tabloids. They could be taking the mickey out of the two of them, laughing at their sexual orientation, their gender, anything like that. But also it can be talking about the betrayal and how people on that side, the woke side, are coming to the right side and things like that. And all this sort of slander, lots of slurs. Any graffiti we've previously seen has been sort of graffitied over, lots of slurs and things like that. And a lot of people have now turned. The tide has turned against Jesus and all of his supporters, and Judas as well. And then we see Peter have his moment of denial. Maybe someone's showing him pictures and we see them on the screen, and, you know, he's in the pictures with Jesus and stuff, and he's doing the I don't know him thing. And then Mary comes on and says, you know what you've done, you've cut him dead. And Peter goes away and Mary is upset, and all the apostles come on and they try to deal with that. As they all sort of fade away, we will see more pictures of Jesus, more screens and headlines and newspapers and articles and pictures and pictures and pictures, so many pictures and things like that. And we see Jesus and he's talking to Pilate, and that goes about as well as it always does. Jesus stays very quiet. Pilate tries to talk to him, doesn't really get anywhere. And so then we're going to go into Herod. I want this song to be extra creepy and hostile. Maybe it starts as sort of funny, slightly banterish, but then it gets more frustrated and angry and creepy and eerie, and there's a very desperate note to how deadly this song becomes. And everything that Herod said starts flashing up on social media as well. There's new hashtags, there's new people talking about it, there's tweets, there's Instagrams, all these different things, there's videos and clips, things that people have filmed of Jesus, there's CCTV, everything like that is all just flashing around and around and around in this big chaotic swirl, and still Jesus doesn't do anything. So Herod just gets riled up and angry and sends him away again, and Jesus ends up going to prison. So Jesus gets taken to a big prison. I'm talking bag over his head, his hands are in handcuffs, maybe behind him. He's getting manhandled, he's been beaten by these guards. We're using the social media once again. We can see pictures. He is bloodied and bruised and things. We can see all the stuff that's been happening to him. Maybe some sneaky footage that people have been filming through the bars of this prison, you know, shots from CCTV that's been leaked, that kind of thing. And all this chaos is all over the social media and everyone is going crazy. And as we see Jesus being led into this prison, we see Mary and Judas and all of the apostles having a sort of candlelit vigil outside, trying to get word, trying to see him. Maybe Judas does not have a candle though. He just can't quite bring himself to hold this light when all he feels is that he is darkness. I would like to see Judas perhaps wrap a blanket around Mary though, a small gesture from him to her, and she again tries to respond to him, tries to reach out and touch, but he shies away from her. He's almost trying to make up to her for what he's done, and also because he knows that Jesus isn't here to look after her, he feels like something he can do in loving gesture towards Jesus and Mary is to look after her for both of them. We then have Mary singing her song and the apostles joining in, and I would like to add that when Mary sings the line, "What do I do now?" I'd like Judas very apart from her on another side of the stage. I'd like him to join in so they both have that line together, "What do I do now?" because neither of them are sure. So we're going to have a shot of Jesus inside the prison now. At the back of the stage we've got a huge barbed wire fence with spotlights and things and searchlights, and after we've seen him go into the prison, now we're seeing him being moved through it. So all the apostles and Mary, they go up to the fence and they're trying to call to him and they're trying to follow him as he gets led off across the back of the stage, and they all leave following him, sort of going round the side of this perimeter fence. And that paves the way for Judas's death. Judas is left alone on the stage. He cannot bring himself to follow Mary and the rest of the apostles to go and see Jesus. Even though Jesus has a bag on his head, he cannot bring himself to go anywhere near. We hear coming onto the stage the priests, the politicians and the police giving interviews, the arresting officers talking to these camera crews and this paparazzi, and they're being interviewed about what is to come and their plans and what's going to happen, and sort of congratulating themselves for what they had done and how they had captured Jesus. And this is his moment of just every pent-up emotion comes out once again, and he is going to launch himself. He is going to yeet himself at them and start attacking and punching and trying to kick and screaming at these priest guys. He will get pulled back, of course. He'll get hauled away from them. All the media will get pushed away, so they'll clear the stage. So it will just be Judas and the priest guys. So the police and the politicians and all the corrupt people. And they will sing their horrible taunting songs. They'll probably kick him, punch him, that kind of thing. It's going to be very physical, a big fight, sort of showing the corrupt cops, that kind of idea. I think it would be very good when Judas is singing the slime and the slime and the slime and the mud riff, if they're sort of punching and kicking him in time with that. So the slime and the slime and the slime and the mud, and then they've left him on the stage with this bloody nose and a bloody lip to make another very sad decision. I want his death to be so harrowing, so brutal, and so poetic. Hear me out. I want to utilize the screens again. I want to show what is in Judas's mind. Going back to the sort of hallucinatory state that Jesus was in with the lepers, I want to have it all start. So again, he sees all these media articles and the pictures and their history and all these things swirling through his brain, and it starts going faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, and it's mixed with his ideas like damned, and then maybe there's new articles with those photos of their kiss and betrayer, 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 and death and blood and all of this stuff, and it gets too much as he's singing and singing and singing. So once again, I want to have this blood-soaked red light on the stage, flooding Judas, surrounded in darkness. And I want to have him walk up to that big bit of the stage that has a huge barbed wire fence on it. I want Judas to climb painstakingly up on this barbed wire fence and rip down a huge piece off the top, tie it around his throat, and then throw himself off. So Judas is hanged on the barbed wire fence, which marks the prison where he has put Jesus to die. Very reminiscent of the crown of thorns that Jesus will be wearing at the end of the story. And the chorus will pick up singing their eerie chanting about Judas after he's died as the apostles begin to flood the stage again. They are still following Jesus inside the prison. And this time he's going to come out with the guards from another part of the prison. Maybe another piece of barbed wire fence can be brought across the stage further down, so we, the audience, see that the apostles are on the other side of the fence and Jesus is being moved from one location to another. This time he'll be in sort of prison gear. He might have an orange outfit on like Ben Forster was wearing. He might have a different colour, and he'll definitely have the bag off his head this time. He'll still be in handcuffs and chains, shackles, that kind of thing, but he can now see where he's going. He's definitely been settled into this prison. He's got the uniform on, that kind of thing, and he's being taken and escorted maybe from one place to a holding cell or another place by all these guards and policemen. And the apostles come on against this other piece of barbed wire fence, and they're all trying to follow him and try to speak to him, and he can see them now because there's no bag on his head and he's looking around. And as this chorus, maybe some of the apostles as well, but not necessarily all of them, as the chorus is singing, "So long, Judas, poor old Judas," Jesus is looking around, he notices the apostles, and as they sing the last line of the "So long, Judas," as they get to the last word, Judas, Jesus notices Judas up on that fence. And he will join in and he will sing/cry out the last word, Judas. But at this point, I want to do something different. And I want Jesus, as he is shouting/singing/screaming/crying, Judas, the last word, you see the fence spark. A bit like a lightning strike has just struck that piece of the fence, and it separates the piece that has Judas hanging by the throat, and his body will drop, maybe to a little sort of hidden section of the stage so the actor can then leave. Yes, in this version of Jesus Christ Superstar, we are seeing godly magic. I might add some more in at different parts of the show, but I definitely just want to have at least one moment where Jesus does do something magic, because why not? And also, Angst, it's fun. And then from this horrifying, angsty, bloody moment, we go into the trial. And I want this to be as horrific and nasty as it possibly can be. Pilate does not want to do the things that he's doing. He doesn't want to sign off on the lashing. He doesn't want him to be crucified, but the crowd has turned. We see more social media, and it is dark and it is bleak, and people are gunning for Jesus to suffer. And suffer he does. And as the lashes is happening, I want there to be social media, so there's pictures that people are taking of this and all the different crazy hashtags, maybe the laughing, oh my god, the use of emojis could be amazing, and there's going to be articles written about it, and there's pictures, maybe some live streaming going on, all of this that's happening. It's going to be brutal and disgusting. In particular, how people are using social media to view it, to share it, to get content from it, and to comment on it as well. And then we come to Superstar, the titular song. Judas returns, and again I want to play on the whole, this is a hallucination that Jesus is having before he dies. He is in pain, he is bloody, he's bruised, he is about to go up on the cross. I don't want to necessarily have Jesus up on the cross during, I want to have him holding it, he's moving, he's wearing the crown of thorns on his head, he is in pain, he is about to die. Of course the guy's going to start hallucinating about his dead boyfriend. Also, at this point as well, I would like Judas to reappear, descending down from the heavens in a different outfit. I would like him to have touches of red, so his jewelry has become red now, maybe the wrist cuffs and things, they are red, but predominantly Judas is now wearing white. partly to show that Jesus has forgiven him, he is relieved of all his sins, he is in heaven, he is in peace, but also because that's how Jesus sees Judas. He doesn't see this person bathed in red and blood and lights like that. He sees this person who is full of hope and life and love and this pureness that he loves in this man. Jesus sees a lot of his love in Judas reflected back at him, and that's why Judas wears white for this hallucination scene. Also, to lean into the darkness a little, I do think that this Judas should have red vivid marks around his throat as well, where the barbed wire was hanging him. Again, like with the leper scene, we're going to lean into the hallucinations, have the screens flashing, the lights, all these things going backwards and forwards, maybe some imagery, maybe some flashes, maybe some words, the lights all twizzling round and around, red, flashing, all these different things. And I also want to utilize the Swedish tour again and have that closeness between Judas and Jesus, reaching for each other, but they can't touch now because Jesus is still alive. And you know what? In yet another moment of #PolyTrio, I want to add Mary into this song. She rarely gets to be in Superstar, and I would love to add her, particularly again because we're playing on it being Jesus's hallucination. And I would quite like the idea of Mary coming out and dancing with Judas. Maybe she's also got a tambourine and they're singing together, and Jesus is seeing these people that he loves the most, and it's a torment to him. And then, as the song ends with, "Are you what they say you are?" There's a big moment, and then everyone turns to look at Jesus. And maybe Judas in that final moment, maybe Jesus ends up center of the stage ready to go up on that cross. And maybe Judas ends up sort of one knee knelt next to him like this. And it's almost like a sort of proposal style imagery, but he's more reaching up to Jesus, but they still can't touch. And as the people come on to attach Jesus to the cross, Judas and everyone else fades away because they are just a hallucination and they can't help him now. So then we have the end of the show. Jesus is left alone on the stage. He's been attached to the cross now. He's been nailed in. I definitely want that to be brutal and dark and horrible. So he has bleeding palms with nails in them, bleeding feet, and he gets up on this cross and it gets raised into the air as he's the only one left. And the lights slowly dim and it's just this beam coming down onto the cross. I want the lights to fade into red a little bit as well while Jesus is speaking, while he's up on the cross. And every time the music does that thing with the chorus, I want the lights to flash red and for there to be images behind him as well. Maybe more shadows of him on the cross like was shown earlier, but also close-ups of his hands, of his feet, of the blood dripping down his face. All of that to be shown. Flash, 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 flash behind him. And then the music calms again. And then he speaks and he says more of his lines. And then the music does that crashing thing and more lights, flash, 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 and all these pictures that you can see, closer, 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 blood, blood, blood. And then on his last line of, "Into your hands I commend my spirit," there's a breath, and then we hear and see him die. It's horrible every time. Oh, so painful but so beautiful. And we'll hold that again, just another small hold. I want to add just a little pause before that sad string music comes in right at the end, so that you really have to sit with this image and look at everything that's happened. And he's now dead, and it's right in front of you. And the lights have now gone from this beam of light to this just wash of red. And it comes slowly this time. It doesn't flash like before. This time it just slowly bathes him in red as the last breath leaves him. And it stays and it holds and it holds. And then the violins and the strings pick up again and we hear that mournful refrain at the end. And as the mourners start to come onto the stage, the cross is lowered down. And after they get him down off the cross, he is lifted up into the air, carefully this time, but still in that crucifixion pose that the audience now knows that Jesus feared all the way through the show, and yet it still has come to pass. He is up, lifted in the crucifixion pose as they carry him off the stage. And Mary walks behind them and she's crying, and behind her, almost like a ghost in his white, walks Judas. And they exit the stage and the music fades and the show is done. And that is it. That is my vision for reimagining Jesus Christ Superstar. I hope you had a happy Easter. I hope you're enjoying your wonderful week. Whether you are celebrating Easter or not, I hope you're having a wonderful time. Thank you for indulging me and being here to watch this video, my wonderful Jellyspoons. If you're not subscribed, hit the subscribe button. If you liked this content, or even if you didn't, hit the like button. Why not? It's just one click. Do it. If you'd like to support me, I have a Ko-fi with a shop which has many different items in it, including my bleach paint t-shirts, my commission videos where you can get a personalised in-character message, or you've got my Patreon where you can support me monthly and you get behind-the-scenes photos and you get to vote on things and all this stuff. Oh, and you get pictures of the dog. That's mostly why people are on my Patreon. As you may be aware already, my theme for April is mischief. If you have any ideas of things you would like me to do based on that theme, chuck them down into the comments below. I would be very interested to hear your thoughts. Alright then, my wonderful Jellyspoons, have an amazing rest of your week. I will see you very, very soon. Goodbye.